Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War news update, first part thereof for the 22nd of July 2024. My goodness, it's been a busy couple of days with regard to all sorts of things going on in the world of politics and the Ukraine War. Well, we'll start as we normally do with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video found below. There have been a number of very high losses in a couple of categories. 1,050 personnel sees the Russian losses at over 1,000 again. 18 tanks is a really big uptick from yesterday, where I think, what was it, 9? So double what we saw yesterday. That is double the average, pretty much. Armoured personnel vehicles, 17. That is pretty much on the average, daily average. 51 artillery systems is a high number for that category, over 3 times the average. And then we have, I think actually pretty much exactly 3 times the average. 2 multiple launch rocket systems, 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems. That's a high number there. Be interested to see what it has been lost in that category. 102 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's the highest number in that category. And 21 pieces of special equipment might be a record there. Let's go and have a look and see what the records are. 102 vehicles and fuel tanks is let's have a look. It is the highest number. So the record daily high, 102 in that category. In special equipment, 21 is the highest number in that category as well. So we have some really high figures in both of those, as well as some fairly challenging figures for the Russians in terms of artillery losses. Daily average for artillery losses is 17.7, so almost 18. So that is pretty much 3 times the daily average there. So thanks for Dell, who provides these figures on a daily basis. You can check out the dashboard, Bill's dashboard, and Dell's stats sheet, some Excel spreadsheet, always linked in the first video of the day, and in fact some of the other videos. Right, let's go on to look at some of the losses as per Andrew Perpetua. This is from yesterday. There is or last night actually, I think it came out. There's a Ukrainian T-64BV and a Russian BMP that I left off the list because I couldn't determine if they are new or known losses. So it just goes to show how seriously he takes this list and how much he tries to make sure that there are no duplicates. Okay, as you can see at the bottom, many of the Ukrainian losses are decoys or trees getting hit by lancets rather than the claim of taking out a vehicle or something. So if you look at that, the rest of the blues, you have no combat losses outside of artillery apart from 1 single tank. And that's, I think, pretty important. For the Russians, you have quite a lot of combat losses. I think it's probably a 3-to-1 combat loss to Russian to Ukrainian. Maybe a little less depending, but somewhere around there anyway. And we have, outside of artillery, fairly bad destroyed and abandoned stats for tanks and IFVs, and APCs about 50-50. For the Ukrainians, it's about 50% of artillery destroyed against damaged. Right, let's look at the Ukrainian losses. The Berger Panzer II, I think that's the first one that has been recorded lost. A recovery vehicle destroyed there, a German provided one. We have a UGV, unmanned ground drone, or unmanned ground vehicle. Okay, artillery, M120K RAK. That is a Western provided artillery piece. Other than that, we've got some Russian stuff, and then an M777 thrown in, a couple of unknown howitzers. Got an M1 Abrams tank damaged by night vision FPV drone, and that's pretty much that. Just the rest is civilian vehicles. So we'll go on to look at the Russian equipment. We've got a Striz and another electronic warfare system taken out, destroyed there. Engineering vehicle. So the Zemledilaya is a mining vehicle. It throws out all these mines, and I recorded a loss of one of those recently as well. So another one getting taken out is very useful. There won't be too many of these, and they can litter the surrounding area with huge numbers of mines. So that's really good that that's been taken out. And then usual suspects in terms of artillery. A Nonna, pretty big gun there, isn't it? Nonna S. Anyway, some D30s as well. Tanks. We've got T80 BVM captured. So that was previously listed as abandoned. So occasionally they do get taken when they are abandoned. A few other tanks there, some BMPs, BTRs, and lots of MTLBs and Tiger M's for APC. So basically quite a few combat losses compared to the Ukrainians. A number of trucks and civilian vehicles and ATVs being destroyed here. Desert Cross 1000-3, so those are the Golf buggies. Now I'm going to show you, well, unfortunately I can't show you the entirety of the video. Where is it? I just need to find it. So this Golf buggy video is interesting. As ever, like, I only try and show you things that tell us something a bit different or over and above just something getting blown up. So here we have a Golf buggy that is followed by an FPV drone, and it has quite a few people on board. I don't know if you can see just as it approaches. There's maybe 6 people on there, 5 or 6. There's no protection for these guys, and the drone hits right in the middle of the people there by the looks of it. And it then causes the vehicle to be abandoned by some people, and then another drone hits it later, and it eventually is on fire. But what you can gather from that is that at least, I'd say at least 3 people perish in that, possibly more, and those others who got out would be pretty injured, no doubt in some way. So when you see these vehicles getting destroyed on a daily basis, you think all of these vehicles getting destroyed that you see brown there, and the ones that are damaged as well, will translate into personnel getting killed and injured. And so a lot, the higher your list of vehicles getting taken out, the higher your personnel losses will be as well. So when we see 102 vehicles and fuel tanks getting taken out, and 21 pieces of special equipment, and when we see quite a few APVs and tanks, that will translate into a heavy day of losses as well. And it's, in other words, there's no doubt that they're claiming that over 1,000 personnel have been lost, given the sheer volume of vehicles that have been lost as well. Okay. So moving aside from Andrew Perpetua's loss list, a pretty good day, I think, for the Ukrainians there, with vehicles just as a whole. That looks like a 4-to-1 loss ratio, which is exactly where the Ukrainians would want it to be. We have some other data points. So around 20,000 Russians have died in the Kharkiv offensive, according to Zelensky, of course. This will be the most pro-Ukrainian claim, given it's coming from the president himself, so take it with a pinch of salt. Around 20,000 Russian troops were killed during Russia's failed offensive in Kharkiv Oblast, he said during an interview with the BBC, and that is phenomenal. But also, it does align with broadly what has been claimed since May the 10th when it started. So we are talking over 2 months of action in that Kharkiv sector. And we have seen a massive uptick in the general staff figures, going as far as 1,780, 1,740, one of those two, being claimed on a single day. And that was largely down to the reason there have been over 1,000 lost on a daily basis is because the Kharkiv offensive has been taking place, and it has been a disaster for the Russians. And so this, I look at that and think, yep, that is entirely plausible. And in fact, somewhat probable given what we have seen and heard. And then when you hear from this, so this is a guy from Vovchansk. So again, I give you the claims. So this is what the General Staff say. These are all the data points. Are we justified in somewhat believing in the General Staff? I think we are justified in somewhat believing General Staff. So are we justified in believing, for example, Zelensky? This is like the umpteenth. Yes, it's an anecdote. It's a single person, but there have been so many other people videoing themselves saying the same thing. Now, is this PSYOPs? Don't know, could be. But we have heard from enough Russians now to think that something is going on. Okay, what's he saying? The claims from this video, several people have looked at this. The claims are that he's the only one left of 300, and then 30 people came to save him, or the people that were left, and 10 of those died. Or 20 of those died, 10 were left, or something like that. So the point being that yet again, and we had this previously, that there were only three left of 300, so three left out of 300 people, and then another claim that there was only 10 left out of, I don't know, some huge number. And if we keep seeing these anecdotes of Russians saying, I'm surrounded by dead bodies, I'm the only guy left out of 300, then you've got to start thinking, these claims by Zelensky and others indicate that Kharkiv has been such a disaster that it probably is the case that 20,000 Russians have died over 2 months. But again, you make up your own mind. Now, the Kyiv Independent, though, reports that Russia is gathering forces in Kharkiv Oblast for fresh attacks. According to the military, Moscow has deployed additional assault units near the village of Shlierbeke, according to a military spokesperson speaking yesterday. This could be an example of the sunk cost fallacy, where they poured so much, money into that, and I'm talking in terms of betting, where you lose all your money at the casino and you pour in even more money to try and take back that money you've lost and end up losing that as well. That's your sunk cost fallacy. Well, this is what they're doing, it appears, in Kharkiv with human beings. Where if Lapan is still in charge of it, and he had a bad rap before he took on this role of being in charge of this offensive, that's failed. He is going to want to save face big time, because he's got a lot of face to save, and that will more likely lead to a sunk cost fallacy scenario, whereby he tries desperately to come out with his head held high from this. And it's been such a disaster. The only thing he can really do is, because cutting his losses means he has to accept defeat there, would be to pile more resources into Kharkiv to try and eventually win it over. Kyiv Independent also reports, Syrsky saying, so he's the commander in charge of the armed forces, saying that Russia is pushing towards Pokrovsk. So Pokrovsk is basically what we would have called the Avdiivka sector, but now it's moved on from Avdiivka and it's getting towards Pokrovsk. The Russians are pushing towards Pokrovsk despite heavy losses. Fierce fighting continues in Krasnohorivka and in the areas of Pokrovsk, Zalizhny, Pevdena and Chaziv Yar, according to Commander-in-Chief. So the Russians are taking huge losses, but they are making grinding territorial gains across the front line, particularly in the Pokrovsk area. We have another example of an apocalyptic doomer. You won't believe it, but even Z Patriots started saying this. An ally of the terrorist Strelkov, Evil Gherkin, Yevgeny Stripnik, declares that Russia is facing a catastrophe and an apocalypse. He recalled that many more soldiers died during assaults than during defense. Someone else was saying, I think was this on one of the state TV? Someone was saying that it will take Russia to have 1 million people to commit to this war for them to come out on top, and that's just not going to happen. So there are people starting to gloom and doom. Now, I have just had to cut out a bit while I tried to speak through what this guy said or read out the subtitles. He just talks too quickly. Basically, he's saying it's catastrophic. Is asked whether he would send, what's his advice to young people, and he said, look, I wouldn't send my own child to die, so why would I send other people's children? And it is real dooming, this that stuff is terrible at the front for the Russians. Now, yes, another anecdote. Can you keep hearing these sorts of claims and think that it's so terrible for the Russians that it's all going to start falling apart, and then you think the same thing a year later and it's still not the case? It's clearly, it seems to me clearly the case that the Russians are losing huge numbers of people, that it has been fairly terrible for an awful long time, but they have an incredible propensity to do that, and we've seen that in history, that the Russians care for human life is less than maybe other nations, and they're much more prepared to send humans into meat grinders in order to grind out a victory. War Translated, Dmitry says Russian propaganda continues to actively promote the idea of meat assaults on motorcycles. The only complaint is that they started too late, as in when a large number of proper combat vehicles had already been burned. So first, motorcycle school is real. Here's a video filmed the other day. Second, the military oddity is that the combat profession already exists and the military registration speciality is only planned to be introduced, and DOSAF training for motorcycle fighters will begin only on October the 1st, at least by winter. Do you want a disgusting joke? In the famous, without the slightest irony now, Ryazan Airborne School, there's long been an existing and operating stable and there are horses in it, and cadets are taught to ride them. Why the F? For what? In case of the Battle of Borodino begins? When will the brains start working for those who should have them? We invented full-time drone operators in the Russian army at a time when the first drone operators of the armed forces of Ukraine had long since retired. Why is that so? Yes, and back to the positive, the 5th Brigade and its motorcycle school are awesome. By the way, in many other brigades, this issue is at the forefront. So they are starting to train motorcycle cavalry, if you like, more formally. And like I said yesterday, this is either being forced to do something that's suboptimal, or it's a case of being forced to do something suboptimal, but actually has ended up having some benefits. There are some collateral positives to this. So they started using motorcycles because they were getting short on other vehicles, and actually motorcycles brought about an advantage. So like I said yesterday, if you're attacking with 20 motorcycles, 20 people on motorcycles, you are, in order to kill those 20 people, that is the case that you have to take out those 20 people with 20 different sort of munitions if you're using mortars and shells. Whereas if you have one infantry fighting vehicle with 20 people in as a single target, you take that out at the end of those 20 people. So there are some advantages, and maybe they don't trigger mines, etc., to attacking with these vehicles. But of course, there are disadvantages, as shown on that video with the drone taking out the golf buggy here. So you are offered less protection on these vehicles, but with motorbikes, of course, there's only one person on each vehicle, maybe two at a push. A train load of Russian T-62s is on the way from Ukraine. Where are the T-72s, T-80s and T-90s is something I said yesterday. When you hear that Russia is mass producing tanks every month, it is very misleading. Why are they producing refurbished and pre-coped T-55s and T-62s? The tanks in the below video are upgraded T-62Ms, which have the distinctive BDD applique armor visible along the front of the turret, in addition to contact one explosive reactive armor around the sides and rear of the turret. They are outclassed at every level on the modern battlefield, including firepower, sights, armor and performance, and are no match even for a modernized Soviet-era BMP-2, let alone a Bradley. In short, they are not main battle tanks in terms of modern warfare standards, and are at best mobile artillery, or, if covered in bio-armor, heavy APCs. Instead, I like to think of these as meat tanks. They are disposable armor that ties up the AFU and forces them to expend resources and sustain losses in defeating them, just like a human meat wave banzai attack. They are also an admission by the Russians that they cannot defeat Ukraine using modern combined arms tactics. Instead, they are using the same formula they did in World War II. Although those tactics worked for the Soviets 80 years ago, they did so against an enemy that was isolated, had finite resources, and was also fighting the Allies on the Western Front. In addition, the Allies were sustaining Russia's war effort through the Lend-Lease Act by providing weapons and materiel to support their war effort, exactly what they are now doing for Ukraine in this war. Russia has none of that support, at least not at the level necessary to sustain their war indefinitely, unless China decides they want to go all in with military aid. Barring that, it is now Russia that is isolated, has limited resources, especially with sanctions, and is facing an enemy supported by NATO and other democracies. This is a point I've just been making repeatedly. Unless China steps in, Russia were doomed from the start. I remind everyone that Russia's GDP is less than the state of Texas. The fantasy that they can defeat NATO in a full-scale conventional war, everyone loses in a nuclear war, is preposterous. If China joined Russia in a conventional war, it would be much closer to a fair fight, but no one anticipates expects that ever happening. So Putin's last hope is to buy time until the US presidential elections and hope that the rhetoric we currently hear from the Republicans is implemented. Too many ifs for me, but I haven't bet the survival of my country on the hopes that I will draw the wild card known as Trump. So interesting analysis there from Osint Uri looking at the T-62s that are turning up on train here and what that tells you about the situation. Now there's another big thread by someone that looks at satellite imagery again, Ben Tan Mai. He, along with John P. and HIMARS and all these people, look at these different satellite images and make their conclusions. Here is one on artillery systems from the Russian storage bases. Now, it's quite technical and in-depth, and I'm not really going to go into all the different stats for each kind of artillery piece, but I think it is looking challenging in terms of, so he looks at someone who's done another analysis that has slightly different numbers to his, slightly higher numbers there but lower there, and looks at what's going on, and it seems to be a lot to do with cannibalization. So the rest of the important imagery in Vishchun's account, so this is this Ukrainian source that has done an account that's slightly different, is based on, is 1 or 2 months old, so let's not make further adjustments for the sake of making as few assumptions as possible. We get 2,360 systems at present at a constant removal rate of 203 units per month. That's 12 months left. So he's looked at how much, on average, how many pieces of artillery are removed every month, and then that gives you that kind of, you've got 12 months left and then you've got bugger all. This doesn't take into account cannibalization rate and potential foreign aid. So you might get more in from here. You might be able to cannibalize from elsewhere. But things are looking bad. And of course, with each subsequent week and month, it becomes more and more difficult to cannibalize and refurbish stuff because it's worse and worse. So I think, like, assuming there's a consistent rate is possibly problematic, and that actually the rate of refurbishment it will take you longer and longer, and it'll be more expensive to get each subsequent artillery unit out of deep storage, and you will get worse and worse end products as you do remove them out of storage. So they're in worse condition. You have to do more work to get them up to standard, and that standard will probably be lower than the ones you were taking out like a year and a half ago. And so I think this is a kind of best case scenario. Russia have got a year left of artillery pieces, and you go back and look at these numbers and think, how can they sustain these huge numbers on a daily basis? Well, it's because they have absolutely phenomenal stocks of these things, but those stocks are finite, and it is becoming a serious problem for the Russians. But anyway, that's linked in my description to the video below, and you can go and check out in far greater detail what is going on with regards to artillery systems. And the conversation, it revolves a lot more around these older systems like the M46 and these D1s, M30s. Things are getting troubling for the Russians. Now, talking about these medium range reconnaissance drones that are causing the Ukrainians an awful lot of trouble. PS01 says the army cannot effectively fight enemy reconnaissance. Well, he doesn't say this. Sersky says this. The guy in charge of the Ukrainian army. The army cannot effectively fight enemy reconnaissance drones due to a total shortage of short-range air defense systems. Now, first-person view and electronic warfare are used to combat them. So you're starting to see first-person view drones being sent up to try and take out these reconnaissance drones, and electronic warfare as well. Interestingly, the UK MOD has come out to say that they are trying to train more Ukrainian soldiers on the Martlet manpads, so the man-portable air defense systems, shoulder-launched ones. So we've had the Stinger from the Americans and all these different ones from, say, Sweden and Poland and other places. But it looks like they've been largely running out of these. It was a case that the Russians were able to give close air support to their attack on Avdiivka and indeed Chasiv Yar for way too long because there seemed to be a lack of these manpads. So the British have now come up and said, we're going to up our provision to you. One of the things that maybe they can really help with would be something like the Martlet, which would offer the Ukrainians much greater ability to shoot down things like these reconnaissance drones. So yeah, that is definitely a challenge that's been recognised as such. Right, there was last night an awful lot of activity. Ukraine sent a big wave. I said there's going to be another wave, and I said they should be going for air bases, and it appears that 2 air bases were struck. Russians report that last night and in the morning, 80 Ukrainian drones were shot down over the territory of the Russian Federation. Most of the drones, 47, were intercepted and destroyed over the Rostov region, 8 over the Krasnodar region, 5 over the Astrakhan region, 1 each over Belgorod, Voronezh and Smolensk. Another 17 drones were shot down over the Black and Azov seas. The extent of the damage is unclear, yet an oil depot in Tuapse is on fire, and another stockpile of flammable materials is on fire in Morozovsk, which is an airbase there. So, lots has happened. Information will trickle out. There is one video that shows a very clear successful hit, and this is Tuapse. It's not the first time Tuapse has been targeted. I won't show you it exploding in the oil refinery, but there you go. So the oil refinery there, a big old explosion, and then that catches fire. Remarkably clear footage of a Ukrainian attack drone flying untouched through Russian ground fire over Krasnodar Krai this morning. Eventually slamming directly into Rosneft's Tuapse refinery and detonating. And then there's additional footage of it later being on fire a lot more. So Ukrainian attack drones successfully hit Russia's Tuapse refinery, which is down on the Black Sea, just southeast of Novorossiysk. And that was hit the last time there was that massive wave of drones that hit Novorossiysk and other places. There are a couple of oil refineries. Tuapse was hit, and it's been hit again. This will cause some serious problems for the Russians with regard to oil infrastructure. Drones have also hit a military airfield in Russia's Morozovsk in the Rostov Oblast. The attack caused the fire. Russian telegram channel Astra reports the airbase hosts 2 Su-24s and Su-35 aircraft. Who knows what has been hit there? And then Anton Gerashchenko reports that Russian telegram channels are claiming a drone attack on Morozovsk, Rostov region. A Russian military airfield is located there. Locals reported seeing drones flying, then smoke rising. According to them, a fuel tank could have been hit. Su-24, Su-24M and Su-34 aircraft are stationed at the airfield. They are used to attack Ukraine. So slightly different aircraft being mentioned there, but nonetheless, that airfield was hit. And a fire was observed at Primorsk Akhtarsk airbase in the Krasnodar region in Russia. Shahid drones are regularly launched from this area towards Ukraine, so this could be targeting Shahid drone launch site or storage of the drones at the airfield, who knows. But we know then that at the moment there are certainly 3 targets that have been successfully hit, 2 air bases and a oil refinery. Let's see if there's anything else. Smoke rising. Iskander M on smoke is rising after supposed Iskander M impact in the Belgorod Dnistrovsky district in Odessa. So it looks like we've just seen, that's evidence of a Russian strike, ballistic missile strike on Odessa. Odessa has had an awful lot of attention over the last few weeks. They've really stepped up the Russians in their attack on Odessa. And then I don't know if anything else has been. So there is a possibility that Su-34, which was standing at the place on the 20th of July, was hit at Morozovsk airfield. There's a possibility that fuel and lubricants warehouse was hit. It will be known for sure when the satellite images appear. So possibly 2 days ago there was a plane that was standing where Morozovsk has been hit. So they might have lost an airplane, but again, you have to wait until a better satellite imagery comes out from today. So I don't know that anything else is being particularly reported at the moment. Things will come out during the day. No doubt giving us more detail on the strikes. 80 odd drones is an awful lot of drones that we don't often see waves of that size. We've only seen maybe a couple of those from Ukraine since they announced that they have the same production capacity of attack drones as the Russians. And I was saying only yesterday, I think, or was it the day before, that we really should expect to see some wide-scale attacks, and you can bet they'll be targeting airfields. And lo and behold, it's exactly what we've seen. Right, Euromaidan Press talks on something that's been mentioned actually quite a lot over the last I don't know when this news came out, maybe a week ago, but then Reporting from Ukraine did a video on this, which is what this article is drawn from, and it's a story of 70 days of holding out for 8 Ukrainian soldiers in the forest next to Chasiv Yar by Canal microdistrict. And they survived. A daring resupply operation using drones kept a besieged Ukrainian squad alive for 70 days, preventing a potential breakthrough in the Russian lines near Chasiv Yar. So this allowed these guys holding out, pretty much surrounded in the forest next to the Canal microdistrict, managed to allow those Ukrainian fighters still fighting in the Canal microdistrict before it fell to get resupplies themselves and keep in position. And amazingly, these guys survived. I don't know how many were initially working in that area, but eight people holding out for 70 days, pretty much surrounded, was pretty incredible, and they did a good job. You can go and read about that in the Euromaidan Press, or see the Reporting from Ukraine video from a couple of days ago, I think it was. Right, War Translated's Dmitry says, just in other bits and pieces here, the Russian Central Bank, at its meeting on July the 26th, will most likely increase the interest rate from 16 to 18%. You know things aren't going too well when the interest rates are 18%. According to analysts of large Russian banks and investment companies, a broad step is needed due to the large deviation of inflation from the forecast of the Bank of Russia, the increase in inflation expectations of the population, and continuing growth of lending. According to central bank's calculations, current seasonally adjusted inflation in Russia was 10.7% in May and 9.3% in June, and annual inflation in June increased to 8.6%. This is significantly higher than the central bank's inflation target of 4%. Now, you know that the Russian government are going to be doing everything they can to try and control the Russian economy. There'll be all sorts of fake numbers coming out, all sorts of anomalies with their stats. You're like, how's that happening, considering they're saying this? So who knows exactly what's going on under the bonnet of the Russian economy, but things are not looking good, as according to this statement from War Translated. And just the last thing to mention is, we forget that this war project from the Russians is supposed to be a war of liberation, to bring the true Russian brothers back to the fold, into the arms of the Russian motherland. Russian soldier here shows the city of Severodonetsk, which Russia captured more than 2 years ago. And this is what it looks like now. It's destroyed and abandoned. Russians call this liberation and help for the people of Donbass. And this is liberation. Destroyed buildings that have not been fixed up. There's no attempts. Occasionally, like places like Mariupol, you get the odd new building complexes that have sprung up. They've not been built particularly well. Lots of complaints about them. But for every, new building complex in Mariupol that does a half-assed job of showing that the Russians are serious about controlling these areas, there are towns that have been completely neglected. There was another place actually north of the border in Belgorod that I saw footage of today. That's a place of 1,500 people that's just been completely abandoned. That's inside Russia, just because they're so worried about outbreak of the war in Belgorod. But this is Severodonetsk, and this is what liberation looks like. It's a town that has been liberated, but has been given scant attention and effort to bring it up to the standard you would expect for this second greatest army in the world, of this great nation of Russia, liberating these big places. But no. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. I really appreciate your support. There might be a fair bit of content today, or I might have to have a big chat about US politics There might be a separate video for that, as it pertains tangentially to the Ukraine war, but just in general geopolitical analysis. But yeah, thank you. Take care. Speak soon.